interesting chat. I mean, it's the first time for me at the Sports Institute. So I've always realized that we all need coaches and mentors in our lives. But boy, in a Sports Institute, the role that coaches play in a young person's life is going to be absolutely significant. And the harmony between parents and coaches are going to be even more important for the kid. So I've got a few slides here, folks, to run through, and I will try and hit the main points so that we give ourselves some time at the end for Q&A. And mine is about talking about different styles for different times, because we need to understand that the children go through different phases in their lives. And I will show you a slide on that. And for each phase, actually, our parenting styles have to change so as to keep abreast with the child's needs. Okay, so here we go. Next slides. So this is a very interesting statement, and it seems to be very negative about, and this came from a journalist who was covering parenting challenges in 2018 from Straits Times. Parenting can be emotionally draining, mentally demanding, involving a lot of hard work and a lot of uncertain outcomes. And that's certainly true. I mean, for me, being a parent and having dealt with a lot of parents who are having parenting challenges with their teenagers during my counseling years, yeah, it's a tough one. It's as tough as keeping a marriage alive, you know, all these challenges that we take on in life. But yet, I think it's at the end of the day, as you get through this, you grow yourself as a parent. You become more involved with your kid, and relationships, if it's done well, get even stronger. And into your elder years, when you have a kid who really loves you and stays close to you, it's worth this difficult journey to go through. It's a challenging journey, but it's not impossible. Next slide. I wanted to provide a health warning from the word go, because I do see this, and I see that also in myself, right? We all tend to parent our kids the way we were parented. So if we had an authoritarian father, as a father, you may tend to be authoritarian. If you were rather permissive and letting your kid do whatever they want to do, you may end up being very permissive. So keep that in mind, because environments change, social, psycho environment change, and the kids' ways of reacting to the modern times are different from the way we reacted when we were kids. So sometimes the parenting style that we use is no more valid, it's no more there. And the other point is, raising children is all about understanding their emotional needs and attending to those emotional needs. And they're all going to change during the 3 phases in their life, which I'll show you later. But on top of that, we also know that as young, upcoming human beings, there's a need for them to be nurtured so that they can fit into society. And part of that is also discipline. How to expect moderate discipline from them. Over-discipline is not good because you break down the child. No discipline is not good because it becomes a wild person. But some kind of moderate discipline is important for the kids as they go through their various stages. Next slide. So these are the 4 parenting styles, right? And I'm sure some of y'all, or most of y'all, have heard about this. And the vertical axis is all about being warm, loving, caring, responding to the emotional needs. The horizontal axis is all about control, strictness, you know, and demanding things from the child. If you look at the left side, you know, the permissive one, you're basically telling the child that you are the boss, right? Do whatever you want to do. And the other one at the bottom left-hand side, you are on your own. That means, boch up, you know, I'm not going to be there. I'm too busy for you. So you go ahead and do whatever you want. Both of them are not going to be very good. And I'll show you the effects on the child. And on the right side, you have at the bottom side, the authoritarian, the RSM style, right? The discipline master style. And when you do that, I mean, you're being very autocratic, you know, there's little warmth involved. Punishment tends to be the way you relate to the child to shape their behavior. And there's always power. You're using your own adult power over them. That doesn't help, because you go by the adage, you know, because I said so, you know, and it has to be so. doesn't help. And I think the one that most cultures around the world go for is the authoritative style. It's about, let us talk about it, right? Being very responsive to the kids' needs over time. You can have high expectations. You must have boundaries and you must have limits, but it's something that you discuss with the child. You try and help them understand the need for it rather than just lording over them. A bit more democracy is involved, some flexibility is involved. So authoritative style is a good way to go. Next slide. Next slide will show you the effect these styles have on the kids. What are the ramifications on the kids' behavior and how do they turn up as human beings? So again, if you look on the left side, the permissive and the uninvolved parenting style. The permissive style will tend to maybe generate a kid who's very aggressive, socially not responsible, you know, he doesn't care about anything. He just wants to do things because he wants to do it, because that's the way he was raised. And if you are uninvolved, the child doesn't understand discipline, doesn't understand boundaries, doesn't understand limits, and don't even know how to relate to an individual. And then on the right side, authoritarian, if you raise a kid on an authoritarian style, that kid is going to be having lots of possible anxiety problems and immaturity because he's never sure about himself, right? So he can be in two extremes. He's either not sure about himself because he's always told exactly what to do. He doesn't have an ability to rationalize things for himself, or because he has been always told exactly what to do and controlled in what he does, he doesn't like it. And when he goes out, he can also become a bully. Because when you tell a person and control them exactly what you do, you're basically bullying them, right? So watch out for that. But those who come from a more coach-related, mentor-related parenting style, authoritative, then they're going to be more competent, that we find. They are higher achieving. They are self-aware. They are confident. They're grabbing things from parents as they're teaching them. And I think that is going to serve them good in the long run. Next slide. So these are the next few slides all about tips on effective parenting. And you know, those 4 pictures that you see on the slide there, they're all representatives of some of our best sportsmen. Kunalan on the top left-hand side, Joseph Schooling's parents on the bottom left-hand side, right? And these pictures will come up from time to time. Next slide. So the first key point that I want to raise is this one here. In any family, the relationship between mom and dad is the most important relationship. If that relationship is not working, there's going to be kind of a disharmony in the family. And I think for the kids, it's very important to see mom and dad working off the same page with them. Mom and dad working in liaison with each other, cooperating to meet the kids' needs. And I think this is very important for the kid. I cannot overemphasize this enough. Next slide. Now, the kids go through 3 phases. The pre-teen until about the age 13, 14, the teen in the middle, right up to about 20, and then the post-teen after 20, right? Now, in each one of these, you must remember one thing. The kid's brain is a work in progress all the way till about 25, 26. Some parts of the brain called the prefrontal cortex area in front here, where they make good judgments, where they make good decisions, that is under development. And that's why sometimes they take unnecessary risks and make poor decisions. And some of the parts of the brain called the amygdala, the limbic system, the emotional system, that is overdeveloped. That develops faster than the prefrontal cortex area. So I find kids being very, especially when they get to teenage years, they become very emotional about things, right? But you must need to know that all these 3 are interconnected. If you don't deal with the pre-teen stage well, you're going to carry problems that the kid did not resolve at that stage into the teen stage. Now you have a double whammy. And you have to work very hard to try and overcome all those issues. So parents' presence in each one of these phases is very important as you attend to the kid. Next slide. So this is interesting, it's a funnel, right? Orientated the right way, okay? What this picture is saying is this. At the bottom, when they are in the pre-teen stage, you need to be very controlling of their lives, of their movements, of their behavior, because they are very new human beings and they are learning a lot. They are like a sponge, right? They're picking up everything, good and bad. And you have to straighten them with sometimes positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. So actually you need to be very tight during the first 13 years and increasingly relaxing as they get older. But by the time they get to the post-teen and early adult, you have to relax. You know, you'd have to let them do what they want to do, provided that they understand the consequences and you actually work with them on the consequences. But guess what? I think in Asia, we tend to reverse this funnel. We have an inverted funnel parenting approach in Asia. In other words, when they are young, small, we give them all the space to run around and make all the mistakes and do all the behaviors that is not right. But as they get to the teen phase, we start to strangle them, right? We try to control them because we don't want them to get into trouble with the law or anybody else for the matter. And then we tend to tighten them during the teen years. And that is the wrong time to do that, because that is the time they need to understand who they are. They need to understand their ramifications to their behaviors. And sometimes they have to make mistakes and learn from them. So be aware of your funneling approach in parenting. Next slide. Mr. Kunalan, wonderful pictures, you know, when he was in the early years with his young children and later years with the grown-up children, you know. And I cannot again overemphasize the need for time. And this is a challenge when I see parents today in my center. Quite a number of parents are working, and by the time they get home, they just don't have enough time for the growing kids who has growing problems, right? Kids today will run to the domestic helper if we have one, to the grandparents if you have the other, and maybe even their own friends, you know. They become the authoritative centers. The authoritative center for kids should be their parents. And the parents should be there in sufficient time and enough time to be able to deal with their challenges and their problems. And we need to spend time. And sometimes I get very disturbed that the lack of work-life harmony in Singapore takes away the time, not only with our children, for even the spouses to relate to each other so that they can top up the love tank, so that the kids can see that my father and mother are very much in love with each other. So I think we have to be very careful and take a step back and ask ourselves, how are we managing our time? And are we present or not when we're at home, rather than attending to the texts from the bosses, attending to a client call overseas. And then even if you're at home, you're not at home. Doesn't help. Time is important when we deal with our kids. Next slide. And grow them. If any one of us look back on an authoritative figure in our lives and we find out who they are, who was that, you would find that you will identify with the person that helped you grow to become stronger, more resilient, more independent, more capable of attending to life challenges. And I think we parents are best suited to do that. We are there, it's given to us. And if we don't grow our kids sufficiently, then the relationship will not be there in the long run. If you're there attending to the problems, helping them to attend to the problems, letting them go so that they can attend to the problems, and then coming back to you to understand lessons learned if they fail, and they feel this continuous mentor and coach behind me, I think they would feel very safe in their lives, and they will be there for you for a very, very long time to come. Next slide. Winning the wars. This is a good one. I've heard too many times the parents are complaining, she does not make up the bed, she doesn't wash the dishes, she doesn't want to come out and talk to me, and she's always talking to her friends on the internet, on the phone. You know, these are what I will say, the small stuff. We sweat the small stuff, and then we get hard on them. And I will show you the next slide about this one, connecting and disconnecting behaviors. We tend to punish them sometimes. When you punish them, you're going to lose them. You're losing the battle. You're more interested in winning the battle as the parent, you know. We don't share power. And when we share power with the child, they say, okay, I am the power here, but I would like to share this with you and my wisdom with you. And let's see how you can get some of this osmosis, this transfusion, so that you can be equally as powerful, that you are empowered to do the job that you need to do, make the decisions in your life. Help them make choices and consequences, understand choices and consequences in their life. And in the process of working with them, don't do things that don't work. And how many times parents keep repeating their behavior with the kids when the kids continue to fight back, push back, it doesn't work, but they still insist on doing the same thing. It's like a power battle, no, between parent and child. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Why persist? Try a new approach. Try a change in yourself. Try and sit down with the kid and say, how can we do this better? And I have a slide for that for you later. So if we go on the left side, the most important role that we parents have to undertake is to win the war with them, right? Win the war with the child. And what is that war? The war is to help them take ownership, bottom left-hand side, responsibility and accountability for their lives. And that is what you want them to do. Eventually, they're going to become their own person. They're going to walk out there in the world, and hopefully they're going to be a very valuable member of the world. How are you, from the time they are toddlers to the time they leave home, how are you going to teach them to take ownership of their lives? If you're going to be there all the time as a helicopter parent, how are you going to make them take responsibility for their lives? If you're going to fight all the battles for them and rescue them all the time, how are you going to help them take accountability for their lives when you're always protecting them when they should be facing their own discipline issues? Think about that. That's the war that we have to win. Next slide. And this is the slide that I was talking about. Now, this is William Glasser, an engineer who became a psychologist. And he was telling us that this slide can apply to anybody in any scenario, right? Whether it's you with your parents or you with your colleagues, your bosses or whoever, even with yourself for that matter, right? If you look at the left side, it's about 7 caring habits or connecting habits. On the right side is 7 deadly habits or disconnecting habits. With all my married couples that I counsel, with all the parents that I work with, when I ask them, which column are you on? Invariably, they will say on the right-hand side. There are too much in a relationship, too much criticizing, blaming, complaining, nagging, threatening, punishing. And I say, I will give you this if you do this for me. That's bribing to control. What we need to be is on the right side. We need to accept the child as he or she is. That's a child. She's going to be different from you. We need to be accepting them. We need to listen to their problems. We need to be there to listen to the problems. And when they have problems, we need to trust and respect them that they will go ahead with some of the advice we are giving them. And sometimes they won't do it, agree, but they will learn in the process. And we need to help, support, and encourage them in becoming the person that they want to be, not the person that we want them to be, right? And most important, in negotiating differences. If they want to do something when you want to do something else, and there's an impasse, sit down and talk about it. And let them understand that the consequences of their choices and what you see are the consequences. And then let them go. Because when you do that, what you're doing is you're actually accepting the child for who they are. You're actually listening to them, and that's very important to them. And you trust and you respect them. And even when they make mistakes, and all of us do, you're going to be there to love them fiercely through all those difficult periods. And they will know that you are there for them. Next slide. And these are some of the more miscellaneous parenting tips are equally as important, right? On the top left-hand side is about control. You want to allow the kid to exercise their own internal locus of control and increasingly drop your control over them, over their ability to make decisions and move on in their life. Help them to love themselves. I see too many young individuals and young people today heavily critical about their lapses. Why? We live in a society where if you do not perform, you are a nothing. And so they walk around with this huge hammer, knocking themselves on the head for things that they don't do well. When what they should be saying is, I'm a human being, there are things I can do well, there are things I can't do well, and I learn how to be compassionate with myself if I don't do things too well. And we need to help them be more compassionate with themselves, because if they don't love themselves, how are they going to go out there and have good relationships? How are they going to trust themselves? How are they going to trust their initiatives in doing things when they don't even trust themselves? So for parents, the bottom left-hand side, if you don't relate to them well, you won't be able to influence them. Because the kids have been controlled all the way till 13, 14, remember, teen years? Now when they get to the pre-teen years, now they get into teen years, guess what's going to happen? They say, enough control. And then they push back. Even we parents don't like people to control us. We like to make our own decisions. Same with the kids. So use your wisdom, bottom right-hand side. Don't use your power when you deal with them. And as parents, learn to be vulnerable. If you make a mistake, apologize. If you think you could have done better, say so. They like to see parents who are also human in their feelings, that you are not always perfect. So if you project that image, I think they would also come along. Next slide. So these are other tips. And on the top left-hand side, as a child keeps growing up and becoming more and more adultish in their nature, let them lead. Let them decide what they want to do for themselves. Let them chart the course for themselves. Empower them to take control of their life. This is called ownership, right? Help them grow. And don't use your parenting styles that was used on you, because that world does not exist anymore, right? On the top right-hand side, always create an environment at home that the children want to come back to. If you're so controlling and there's disharmony and father and mother are fighting, there's a lot of screaming going on, that is not a home the kids want to come back to. They will rather go elsewhere. But if they have a home that's caring, respectful, trusting of them, even when they make mistakes, they will come home. Because at the end of the day, children need their parents. The umbilical cord can never be taken away, ever in their lives. On the bottom left-hand side, help them balance between self-worth and self-esteem. It's a problem here in Singapore too, and maybe even around the world. Increasingly, more and more kids are saying, how do I compare with the other guy? I must be better. I must be the best. I must have the world respect me and put me on a pedestal. So for them, the entire world is how the rest of the world sees them versus how they see themselves. Their self-worth. Who am I? What am I good at? Am I aware of my weaknesses and my strengths? And if I'm weak, what can I do to something, to grow, to become more, to stronger, become more resilient, to be more present? And I think if a person can understand themselves, hug themselves, be happy with themselves, I think the rest of their life journey will be pretty good. But I see too many of them not happy with themselves. And then starts the disharmony in their lives. Next slide. So different phases, different styles. Let me go through them very quickly. First is the preteen. Next slide. So in this way, in this phase, until the age of 13, 14, parent-child relationship is very important. And parent, you are mostly in control at this stage because they're very, very young, right? But there's a health warning here. Because you took 13, 14 years to control them, guess what? When you get into the teen years, you still want to continue doing that. You got to learn how to unlearn that control and give them more control, transfer control over to them, right? So you got to change habits very quickly. And on the right side, these are the things we want to teach them during these years, right? Ownership, responsibility, accountability. Increasingly give them this so that they become tougher in these areas. Learn how to negotiate, learn how to be resilient. Social skills, that means they have to learn how to fit into society, right? And they need to know what are boundaries, limits, and you need to teach them that too. And all this happens during the first 13, 14 years, very important years. Next one. Then when they become teen, you have to now change. You have to learn how to adapt, adjust, accommodate the new person that's come into your life. Hey, what happened to the kid? Now this one is very rebellious, talking back, doesn't want to come home on time, right? Be in the moment. Because now this kid is really going to be exploring their domain. And you're going to be very much in the moment to deal with them. Because if you're going to be fearful, catastrophize into the future, what's going to happen to them? You're going to go out there and take control of their lives. And that's going to help. Control less. Negotiate more. That's the only way forward. And when you do this, they will learn how to do that too. On the right side, no more my way or the highway. It's not going to work anymore, right? It's not going to work. I've seen this too often already. And then we look at the two boxes at the bottom. They give you an idea of the kind of conversations you want to have with your kid, right? The left one is very interesting. You know, I have a problem with what you're doing. And I think I have to change. The parent is telling the kid, no, I think I have to change or we'll never solve the problem. So your parent is saying, time for me to become an adult with you, not the parent criticizing the child, but I want to be the adult with you, right? On the right-hand side, you have a statement where, yeah, I want you to learn from your mistakes. And if we continue to work on this and we both of us are dissatisfied with what you choose to do, then let's sit down together and figure out a better way forward. Having these chats and having these conversations with one or both parents, ideally with both parents, is going to be so important to the kid. Without any judgment, with lots of empathy, and a lot of genuineness when you deal with them. Next slide. Then the post-income. Now they are really racing on to become an adult, right? Now you become, as a parent, you become the consultant, the goalkeeper, you know, like Go Chok Tong will tell us. You're now a life teacher. You have a lot of wisdom, a lot of insights. You have made mistakes as a parent. You know your kid very well. Now, you just don't go and capo and maso without permission. No, you're going to be invited. Actually, that starts from the teen times. They will invite you when they want to discuss things with you. Don't be a capo. Don't just barge in. Right? Get to respect them as growing adults. And if you have new learnings, share that with them because it's going to be very useful. And if they're going to be staying with you, and I'm seeing a lot of this, right? I see a lot of kids out there becoming adult teenagers. 30 years old, still staying with parents, not independent, can't even find a place of their own, no savings, financially very unstable. What's happening? You know, we need to tell the kids, hey, as soon as you start working, you got to start looking after yourself, you know. Otherwise, how are you going to look after your spouse? How are you going to look after your family? When are you going to start learning the skills? And sometimes with this, we have to discuss it with them and find out a way where they can take ownership. Next slide. So this one here just shows you as a parent, and when you're supporting your sporting kid, on the left side, what is an example of positive support? And on the right side, what is too much pressure on the kid, right? And if you look at the second green box on the left side, developing a sense of autonomy and independence, this ownership, this is responsibility, allowing the kid to think for themselves. That is what you call constructive support. On the right side, too much pressure, look at the third red box at on the right side, can develop a fear of failure and a lack of motivation. Too much pressure, hey, you're not matching up to my expectation. What the hell is happening to you? Why are you like this? Why are you so slow and why are you so weak? This kind of statements you make, these drivers and injunctions ain't gonna help the kid. So understand the difference between support and pressure. Next slide. This one, I just want to show you guys the stresses that you parents, as you are parenting your sporting kid, go through. And everybody has this, right? The blue boxes are our needs, our basic needs. And these basic needs continue throughout all our phases of our life, through all our stages of development. And your kids is going through this too, right? The basic needs are survival. Some is to do with, for you parents, it's about finance. Can I finance my kid in this sporting journey? And then for how long is it going to take? And some of you may even have health issues or mental health issues from the pressures of life that's affecting you. Then there's a thing called power. You parents also want to feel good about being a parent, right? So even for you, you have things like self-worth and self-esteem issues that's working on you. And if it's working on you, can you imagine what's happening to the kid? The kid, they're going through all this too at the same time. While you are having your stressors not meeting these 5 needs, they are also having their stressors not meeting these 5 needs too. Maybe survival they will have because they have a roof over their head, so they don't have to worry about it. But when it comes to freedom, yeah, they have a problem there too. And you too. As a parent, you're so busy doing so many things in your in-tray. You don't have a freedom from that in-tray. You don't have the freedom to do the kind of things that you want to do. You don't have choices. You have very few choices. And sometimes you feel you just don't have the independence. And sometimes when you become a very busy parent, like Easy with 4 kids, I can understand how challenging that can be, right? Fun. If you don't have freedom, when are you going to have fun? Enjoy laughter, learning, picking up new knowledge and new skills. That's fun, right? And even going through some very special courses to understand how can I change to be a better person in my relationships too. And if you don't get the last 4, at least have the last one, love and belonging. So important, right? Especially for your kids and for you too, right? You want to feel that you belong. You want to feel that you're being loved. You want to feel that you can share your problems and your frailties and vulnerabilities with somebody. You want to feel that you can cooperate with someone. And if you can't do all this, and if you're not meeting any of your needs, any one of these needs you don't meet, that's going to affect your behavior. And you have to be mindful of that. And that's the same with your kid too. If they don't meet any of these needs, that's going to affect their behavior too. Next slide. So how do you cope with your stresses? And I have this basic bullets here for you. You need to build a reserve. Sometimes you're so much in autopilot, we don't even stop by the road to smell the roses, as the saying goes, isn't it? So to build reserve so that you have the capacity, you need time for yourself, right? Physical exercise. I read something in the newspaper today. You do 2 30-minute walks every week for 4 weeks, and you have a good mental health situation. Interesting. So physical exercise and mental exercises, which brings me to the second point, which is about mindfulness and breathing, the third bullet there. And mindfulness has helped us to find a balance in our life, to help us manage our emotions, our thoughts, and our relationships. It helps us be grateful for things that are going well in our lives. I have a sporting son. Yeah, he may not have won any of the competitions, but he's a lovely young child. You have acceptance, that you will accept that not everything that you want in your life is going to go your way. Life is like that. You have to learn how to let go of any thoughts or any emotions that's not serving you well. And you want to understand how to find the balance between striving and non-striving. Because you overstrive, overly high standard, you're going to burn yourself out. And you also want to learn about how not to be judgmental about your kid, right? Not being too judgmental about yourself either. And loving kindness. Extend loving kindness to everybody in the Sports Institute, to the fellow competitors, to your child, and extend loving kindness to yourself. And that will help you to build your capacity. On the second bullet, don't have to take everything on your own shoulder, you know. You're not none of us are Superman and Superwoman, you know. Stop being a rescuer and rescue your kids all the time. Learn how to cooperate, collaborate, and facilitate with the various people around you. And that is your village. You need to work with the village to get on with your life and also to get on with the kids' life, right? Work with the spouses, the coach, even work with your child and your friends. And if all that doesn't work, then find a therapist who can help you. And that also can work sometimes, right? Manage your yearnings, expectation, comparison. Boy, this one is a big killer. Too many of us walk around with expectations that we bring from our childhood days. My son must be like that. My daughter must be like that. They must go to university, get first-class honors. They must have masters because degree no more useful. All these yearnings and expectations. And then you look around with the other good friends' kids and look around at your cousins' kids. They're all doing well. How come my kid's not doing well? All these comparisons. It's not helping you in trying to be more emotionally, psychologically balanced. It's just adding pressure. And then that pressure goes on to the kid. Doesn't help. Be less critical of yourself. I think by the time your kid is at teenage years, you have done a wonderful job. As long as they're not harming themselves, harming anybody else, and they're on the way to looking after themselves, you're done yourself. But don't put too high a standard on yourself. You will make mistakes, there's no doubt about it. And when they do, you just hug yourself and be more compassionate and tell yourself, I think I have learned something from this and I can do it better the next time around. And that compassion is very important. And every time you're stuck and you do not know where else to go, just think about the one person in your life that has helped you a lot, who has been there for you. And then visualize the person next to you. And then ask yourself, what will that person tell me now with the problem and the challenge that I have? That will help. Last one. So the bottom line is this. You're the parent, you have the kids, you're raising this kid to the Sports Institute. You have a choice. You want to end up on the left side or you want to end up on the right side. The right side have all the collection of good looking pictures there, right? Kids who have done well, right? On the right side, you have kids who have mental illness. Do you know that from 2012 to 2017 in Singapore, every year, for 5 years, I have the figures for 18, 19 not out yet. Every year, 2,400 students have been going to IMH for mental health problems. Every year. And that is discounting those who are on the counselors' ledgers and those who are seeing private psychiatrists and psychologists. Our mental health problems with our children in Singapore is high. And this one here talks about how when their emotional needs and behavioral needs are not met when they're young, that is considered an adverse childhood experience. And it leads to stresses which don't get addressed, leads to anxieties, which don't get addressed, leads to depression. So, time with the kids, love them, don't judge them. Teach them ownership, responsibility, and accountability. And love each other, parents, because it's very important for them. Thank you.
Hi, Frank. I just wanted to comment on your point. You made a point about the parents having a strong relationship and that affects the child. Could you elaborate more on that? I found that a very interesting point.
Yes. One of the things that worries me about parents is when they're not having a good relationship, with each other, for whatever reasons there may be, it affects the way they parent the child. And so you'll get to a situation where when you have a acrimonious relationship between parents, there's going to be alienating that happens between the parents. That means one parent would alienate the other parent from the children. And that is very dangerous. That means you can have the mother saying, yeah, don't bother about your father, like he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He's never home anyway to attend to your problem, right? And then the father will tell the daughter, don't go and worry about, or the son, don't bother with your mother, that she's always nagging and complaining, she doesn't know what the hell she's trying to get out of you. And when you do this alienating, it becomes very difficult for the child to figure out, who do I go to? Where's my go-to point if I have a problem? And I had a kid recently, 20 years old, and he has his own set of medical problems, and mother and father have been divorced, and they're still staying in the same house. And he doesn't know who to go to, And then when he sees this at 20 years old, he's turning around and telling me, and he has this medical problem, right? The skin problem. He's saying, I think my skin problem caused the problems with my parents splitting. I am the cause of their divorce.
So he blames himself.
He blames himself, yeah. So all this disharmony within the parental relationship creates all kinds of consequences, possible consequences. You will have one guy I deal with who marries and wants to have a good married life with kids. Why? Because he saw his father and mother having terrible times during the marriage. And he wants his marriage to be perfect. And his expectations are so high that he actually alienates his spouse because her standards are not so high. You know what I mean? So that's one possible reason. The other reason is that some of them will still go around saying, I will never get married because of what happened to my parents. Okay? And then when it comes to attending to your emotional and psychological resilience, they get so preoccupied with watching what is happening with their parents. They're not attending to themselves. They're not attending to the problems that they are facing themselves. And so what happens when they have challenges later on in their life, they don't know how to attend to them. So these are just some of the examples of the ramifications on children. And a divorce can be also considered an adverse childhood experience. And they will affect them emotionally and psychologically in time to their lives. Now, there are going to be some who will be tough no matter what happens to them, you know, but these are very few and far between, and that's a function of how we are wired. Some are wired with a very strong prefrontal cortex and not a very strong limbic emotional system, which may have its own setback, but they can get through life because they think through it and they use their cognitive strengths to work through their problems. And no matter what happens to them, they're tough. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but those are very few and rare in between.
I thought the other point you made was also very thoughtful about changing your parenting style from when the child is preteen and then teen. But of course, that's easier said than done.
Of course.
It takes a lot of self-control and self-awareness.
Yes, yes. Parents' biggest problem is they want the child, they fear, they want the child to be successful, they want the child to be happy, right? And that is every parent's wish, isn't it? The question is, how do you make this happen? Do you make it happen because you want to control the outcomes? Or do you want this to happen because you want to hand over the control to the child to achieve the outcomes while you offer the guidance and the support from the side? And I think the second approach will probably work. Of course, you can remove all obstacles from the child and give him an easy ride. But when you are no more there, can the child perform on their own? That's a tough one. And that's what we have to keep in mind. But we want the best for our child, we have to keep asking ourselves, can my child operate on his or her own when we are no more there for them? Yeah.
Thanks, Frank.
Welcome.
Okay, I have a question. Like, if my spouse and me have different parenting styles, how do we discipline our child?
First thing to do is both of you need to get together to sort it out. Now, this is another very good question there, Mary. Remember the slide on battles and wars? Okay, win the wars, don't sweat the small stuff, the battles, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the small stuff, you can afford to disagree, but don't disagree until it becomes hugely acrimonious, right? But don't try and disagree on the big wars. That's where you need to be together as we approach the child. So it is impossible to have wife and husband operate with the same parenting style. Absolutely impossible. Because we all have our predisposing background issues and the way we were shaped and nurtured, right? And so actually when you bring different styles in together, it actually can be quite helpful, provided we understand what is it that we are doing. We need to co-parent. At the end of the day, on the key issues, we need to co-parent. So we need to help the child realize that father and mother are on the same page when it comes to this big issue, right? But on other issues, we will agree to disagree amicably, because maybe you will be given a choice which way you want to go with it. You know what I mean? But the outcome, they must agree. Husband and wives disagreeing is something that we cannot do away with, but Once in a while, it's nice for the husband to tell the wife, hey, I saw you do that with the boy. Huh? I like that, you know. Very nice style. That means affirm the wife for what they have done. And if you do that, the wife one day will see the husband dealing with the daughter and say, ah, that was a good approach. And when you say that, you're also allowing yourself to learn from your partner, from your spouse. Because sometimes they have a background which has great parenting experiences and they bring to the family. And so we need to be very aware and mindful that the other person in my marriage actually may have some good points and good way of dealing with it. And there will be also occasions where you want to say default mode. When it comes to dealing with the girls, your mother has control. If it comes to dealing with the boys, the father has control. Sometimes you may want to, you know, allocate responsibility for certain key issues in a child's life. But there will be enough opportunities for both to work on the same page. So try and be respectful. Try and understand the benefits of working on the same page for the child. And even if there is a divorce, there is no reason why the parents cannot co-parent even after a divorce, as long as they can put aside their differences and put the interests of the child uppermost in their mind. Does that answer your question, Mary?
Yes, thank you.
All that requires work. All that requires a lot of introspection. Requires us to have time to ourselves to figure out, hey, how do I get out of this in a better way? You know what I mean? And finding that time to ourselves is so important as part of the coping with stressors. That personal time, and I encourage this to all parents who are listening in. Please go and find a mindfulness program. I'm not selling you Koyo because I come from Brahm Centre, but actually in my other webinars on Sundays, which I do with my boss and another colleague, and we invite NUS students in to share their experiences that they're going through having attended the mindfulness course. I was blown away. These students are saying, I am much more at peace with myself. They go on to say, I actually have a better relationship in the house now. They actually go on to say, I am helping my parents relate to each other. I am blown away. It's NUS kids, you know. So I think mindfulness has great advantages. And if parents and children can go for mindfulness programs and classes, I think it will help a lot. And especially in the sporting field, definitely mindfulness will help the sporting kids. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Someone has asked, there's actually many mindfulness books and workshops outside. And what would be your recommendation, Frank?
Oh, wow. Okay, depends on how heavy a reading you want to go through. I would recommend John Kabat-Zinn. You know, he stepped into the mindfulness guru chair, you know. John Kabat-Zinn. In fact, his son Will is also a mindfulness facilitator and teacher. The book is Full Catastrophe Living. In other words, it's all about us managing all the problems that the world can throw at us, right? All the curveballs that the world can throw at us, right? How do we manage this as they come at us? How do we find that balance so that we can continue to attend to our priorities on a day-to-day basis? And I'm a personal beneficiary of this mindfulness program because out of the two sons, I have one son who's not doing very well. And, you know, it has helped us to manage our relationship with him, help us to remain objective in the way we deal with him, help us to keep our doors still open for him. Yeah, so I think it's very helpful. It's a way of telling the materialistic world, I will leave you aside for a while I attend to my needs, rather than allowing the material world to define our needs. Yeah.
Frank, there is also one more question from the parents. I can feel a great challenge in becoming friends to the children, especially from Generation X to the current child's Generation Z. So what would be the key advice for parents?
You know, personally, I don't think kids want their parents to be their friends. And I'll be very honest with you, the kids nowadays are very mature. And one of the reasons, sometimes I think they're overly mature. They may be too mature ahead of their age because of the information that they have available to them. I have kids who come to my counseling and they can tell me where their parent is not parenting well because they read about it. I have kids who are going up to the parents and suggesting to them, I think you should go and see a lawyer. Here's a name card. Suggest you go and get your divorce. You know, these kind of things were unthinkable during my time. Okay. So at the risk of oversimplifying it, let me just say this. Children don't need parents to be their friends. Children want their parents to be their authoritative figures. And in fact, I would say, given what the children are going through today, my example of that depression statistic I provided to you that in IMH that students are going through in 2012 to 2017, and then the particular article that I just showed you, they have their challenges. They don't want friends as a parents, because when you look at their friends and what their friends are doing for them, their friends give them a sanctuary to be accepted. And why is it that their friends become so close to them and they're not close enough to their parents? Because they find that the parents are too judgmental and too expecting of them. So the kids have all these problems they're going through as their mind is continuing to be a work in progress and trying to form itself, right? So very important is to keep it very simple with your kids. If you look at what they do with their friends are non-judgmental. In fact, their friends are sometimes even very interested in what they're doing. And this is a clue that parents can take from how our children work with their friends. Learn to be non-judgmental. Love them fiercely. Even if you discipline them, you continue to love them fiercely. You will love them fiercely even if they make a mistake, and if they do harm to themselves or harm to somebody else. Sometimes it is just not an act of commission, it's more an act of omission. They just are learning as they go through. Our parents, we as parents, we want them to be safe. Sometimes we want to wear our children as medals on our chest. That is our problem. So if we can learn how to look at our child and say, this is a human being that is one day going to become an adult, and my responsibility is to help them become a good human being, to ride through this rodeo rides that they're going through in life and help them come out of it without being injured. If we take that approach and we are there for them, that's good. But if we are not there for them, and from the young they go to the helper for help, or they go to the grandparents for help, or they go to the discipline master for help, and you are least featured in their life, then it's not going to work. The umbilical cord between child and parent is a very strong one. It cannot be broken. Children need their parents. Even I need my mom, and who died last year at the age of 91. I still needed her. She's my mom. I mean, she raised me, and I can see many good values that I picked up from her. And some I will not pick up. My father died very early, and I still miss him. You know what I mean? So the bond between parent and child is always there. How do we make sure that that serves them in their best interest? Is by not judging them, loving them fiercely, and being there when they need us. So you cannot say, oh, I'm too busy, or I'm working too long, or if I'm there and we have a problem, I'm attending to your problem, suddenly there's a text on my phone, I have to attend to my boss and my work. All this doesn't work. They want undivided attention. And if they see you also being attracted to something else, you're not attentive, you are you're inattentive and you cannot be there for them all the time, they're going to pick that up. If you're going to tell them, don't deal with your iPhone and talk, sit down at dinner and talk to us, and you have your iPhone on your side, that's not going to help. So all these kids that actually went through the mindfulness program in NUS that I talked to you about, Sam, boy, I tell you, I was blown away with their attitude now, you know, because they say that they have grown so much after attending the mindfulness. And why? Because they understood some of these attitudes of mindfulness, its principles, from gratitude to acceptance to letting go, things that we have forgotten in our fast race. These are the things that maybe we took on naturally during our early years. Whereas today, the pressures placed on the kids to perform, to get up there, to be successful is so strong. During my time, O-level, okay lah, what job? Let me go and seek around and then get whatever job I can. Money, okay lah, a little bit good enough. But nowadays, the esteem factor is so strong, it drives them. It drives them all crazy. I mean, it's all competitive within themselves. You go to the high-end schools and the stress levels there are the highest in our high-end schools. How is that possible? You know, so bottom line, be aware that the kids today have more challenges than even during our time. And if you know that your kid is having more challenges than you had during your time, then I think the way we deal with them has to change. The way our parents dealt with us and the way we deal with them has to change. We got to be there. We got to be their coach and their mentor, not their friend.
Frank, may I ask what kind of behaviors manifest as a result of all these pressures have you observed?
One are the addictive behaviors, the drinking, the drugs. I was an addiction counselor for the last 4 years, 5 years. I still got clients who are addicted to substances. When they lose their connection with their parents, and nobody in the house is caring for them, they then roam the streets and they look for friends who will welcome them. And there will always be birds of a feather. There are many of them out there whose parents are not there for them. They are not academically inclined. They are labeled as being weak. And these are the kids, you know, what we call the youth at risk, and I worked with some of them. And there are always these predisposing issues that contributes to this. And one of them is the lack of parental presence. And even when I work with some of these youth at risk, and I try and get the parents to come in so that we can talk about how they can do better in parenting the kids, they don't come. Some of the parents don't come. And I look at this kid and I say, gone lah, you know, Sudha, you know, who's going to be there for this kid? We can't be there for the kid all the way through his life. He's going to go through jail and prisons and SAF boys' homes and town, and then come out of there very inconsistent in his own psyche and the way he does things out there. So I think it's very important that we understand the pressures that the kids are going to go through, the parameters that are necessary for them to function well. And it requires education, it requires reading up, it requires understanding the kid and understanding your kid, you know. Sometimes we adults are so busy chasing our own stressors that we don't have time for our kids. And I see that. I mean, you have families where if husband and wife are not getting on with each other, and the child is not being attended to, and the child now acts out. Now the parents have to attend to their problem as well, to the child problem. You tell me, where is the presence? Where is the presence in the house? There's none. So for the kid, that adult presence, that authoritative presence is very important. They will make mistakes, they will do things that we don't want them to do. But each time they do something that is going to get them into trouble, what we want them to have is the picture of the father and mother in the back of their head as they are about to do it. And if they have the picture, the back of the head that has raised them well and has taught them well and tell them that this is not something that you should do, they will stop doing it. But to get that picture in the back of the head, you have to be there in their lives as they go through these stages in their lives. I tell many families that we have many tsunamis that we go through in our lives. The first tsunami, let's say the man and woman are going to get married, right? The first tsunami they have to contend with is themselves, right? Because as they grow from one stage to another stage of development, they are changing. And their needs will also be changing, right? Right. So this is the first tsunami. The second tsunami is the marriage itself. The relationship itself goes through stages of changes. The first 2 years, wonderful. The subsequent year becomes more challenging as the real person surfaces in the relationship. And then you get through midlife crisis. And then you get through your old age, right? And each stage, the relationship requires a different person to be present, to turn up. And you need to understand. So you're going through a change. The relationship is forcing you a change. And the last change is when the kid arrives. Each time there's a new member in the family, whether it's your in-law coming in to stay with you or a new kid that has come in, each input changes the whole dynamics in the family. And you have to start all over again. Now, we human beings are not used to dealing with this kind of three psychosocial tsunamis at the same time. We're not used to these things. And in the modern world, it becomes even more challenging. So, time. Spend time.